Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Icelandic Roots public webinar. This is the first in our series of destination places in Iceland to be sure to visit, if only virtually. Today's webinar is entitled Hælið Museum, the Great White Plague Center. For those of you unfamiliar with Icelandic Roots, we are a nonprofit organization designed to promote and preserve our Icelandic heritage, culture, genealogy, and history that recently celebrated our 8th anniversary. To learn more, we encourage you to visit our website at icelandicroots.com, as well as on Facebook and on Instagram. Please note that this webinar is recorded and will be available within a week or so on the Icelandic Roots YouTube channel. Since it's being held in a webinar format, all participants, other than the 3 panelists that are here working the webinar, you are muted and are not visible. We encourage anyone to submit questions using the Q&A button, usually located on the lower part of your computer screen as you scroll your cursor over it. I am Jody Armand Jones. I am a volunteer with Icelandic Roots, coming to you from Minnesota. Joining me today is Doug Hansen, another Icelandic Roots volunteer who is monitoring the technical side of things in Virginia. And of course, the main event is Maria Pálsdóttir, who is coming to us from just south of Akureyri, Iceland. And we're pretty much just going to turn it over to her to explain a little bit about who she is and how she is in the position she is now. And without further ado, Maria, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start by sharing the screen and let you hear some beautiful music.
Þig sem í fjarlægð fjöllin bak við dvelur og fagrar vonir tengdir líf mitt við. Minn hugur þráir hjartað ákaft saknar, horfnum stundum ljúfum dvel ég hjá. Heyrirðu ei þig hjartað kallar á? Heyrir ei storm kveðju mína ber? Þú fagra minning eftir skildir eina sem aldrei gleymist meðan lífs ég Þig sem í fjarlægð fjöllin bak við dvelur og fagrar vonir tengdir líf mitt við. Minn hugur þráir hjartað ákaft saknar,
So this beautiful song you just heard, the story behind it is so beautiful, and I have to tell you. At Kristnes Hospital, there was a woman, newly married, Margrét Sigurðardóttir, and she was dying from tuberculosis. Her husband was a composer, and he was on his way to visit her, maybe for the last time. But then there came this storm, this bad weather, so he couldn't come. And then Margaret was worried that she might never see him again. So she talked to her friend in the next room and asked him, he was a poet, asked him to write a letter for her because he was so weak. So he wrote this beautiful poem. And when her husband came, she was dead. He found this letter with this beautiful poem in it, and he immediately composed this song, which was premiered at her funeral. And the text is about to be distant and be far away from the beloved ones. This is one of the stories I tell at the Hælið, my museum and cafe, which opened at Kristnes, which is this little village in this red ring on the picture, in 2018. I am actually from the farm, a little south of this little ring with a brown roof. My parents live there still, and I grew up there and worked on the farm. And every evening we played, all the kids in this little village you see on the picture, we played around this hospital, which was not a tuberculosis hospital when I was growing up, but home for elderly. And it was a beautiful village to grow up in. Everything was so neat and beautiful. People that visited were amazed because there were flowers along every path. Everything was beautifully kept, and there were a lot of people working to maintain this beautiful village. Then something happened, 93, I think, about the ownership. The hospital in Akureyri, which is the closest town to this village, received this village and not enough money to maintain the buildings. So what happened the next decades was that the houses shut down one after another. People really wanted to buy the houses and restore them, but it was complicated because the land belonged to some organization and the houses belonged to the hospital, and everything was like stuck. And when I was visiting my parents 2015, I took this little walk down memory lane to visit my childhood village. And I was so shocked to see how everything was deteriorated. And I asked myself, why doesn't someone do something about this? This is just not good enough. And then I somehow got hit by a lightning, or something struck me. Or something opened my eyes. Just, why don't I do something? I'm a grown up. I can decide to do something if I want to. And it was a very strange thought for me, because I was living in the south, 3 kids and a man and a newly built house, and only coming for visits. But this idea didn't leave me alone. And I was thinking, what could I do for the houses that were closed? What would I want to see there? And I immediately thought, this has to connect to the history. This has to connect to the story of the tuberculosis. And I also was working as a guide, tourist guide, and I was a bit thinking about the tourism in Iceland, and we need more attractions in this beautiful fjord, Eyjafjarðarsveit. So I thought, why don't I just open a museum about the tuberculosis? That was the idea. And I asked people around. Some said, no, don't touch it. It's too sad. This is just sorrow and darkness and depression. Don't touch it. And I didn't agree. I thought, well, it's tough, it's sad, but it's our history. It's a part of our history. And why shouldn't we tell it? People visit Auschwitz. Maybe not a good comparison, but people want to know about the history, what happened, and we want to learn. And I decided to take a closer look at this idea. And because I'm a teacher and an actor and a tourist guide, and I don't know darn thing about running a business. So I went to different courses to make a business plan, to try learn something about money, and before I knew it, I had moved north and made an agreement with the hospital in Akureyri to borrow these houses. And I first opened the cafe in 2018, and after that winter I used for preparing the museum, and we opened the museum 2019. That was the brief history of how this happened. And maybe a little bit about tuberculosis and the story in Iceland. It is known that the tuberculosis have been with us from since the settlers came, but it didn't break out until 1900. And some explanations are that we moved from the turf houses towards we started building sea villages for the fishing, to go fishing. And we didn't know how to make these houses, so they were cold and they were wet, and people got very sick in them, because we knew how to build turf houses where people were warm and cozy. And that's one of the explanations. But at least at 1900, this was widespread in Iceland. And tuberculosis is a bacteria. It's a bacteria, and it spreads through the air. If you cough, you can cough the bacteria out, and the person who inhales it can be 3 hours later inhaling it. It doesn't have to be in the moment. So it's a tricky bacteria. And it's also interesting that I was, of course, reading everything I found about tuberculosis, and what thrilled me to read and learn was that the skirts became shorter because of tuberculosis. Women were dragging their skirts in the mud, and then the bacteria would go up in the air. So the skirts went shorter, and then it wouldn't touch the floor and make the bacteria come up. And also the man's sideburns, they went, because they were like lingering there. So all kinds of fashion connects to tuberculosis. When I was starting to dig in this, I thought maybe this belonged to the past and wasn't such a big thing today, but there I was very, very wrong. Tuberculosis is still a very, very widespread disease. I thought first only in the East and Africa, Asia, Russia, but then I learned that our nearest neighbors, Greenland, they also have it. And that shocked me. And the reason and the explanation for that is that it's so rural, it's so difficult to travel. So they never had the chance to do what they did in Iceland in 35, 40. They went with this traveling X-ray machine. They went with it all around the island and could X-ray people that had no symptoms and find out who had the bacteria, who had it in their lungs, and then they could isolate them. And then we took the bacteria down, and this disease, we went from the highest rate in Europe. Iceland had the highest rate of sick people, and down to the lowest rate in a very short time because of this. They never made it in Greenland because it's so difficult to travel. This was a little bit about the disease. And 1927, Kristnes is built. And it took many, many years to build it, not to build it, but to decide to build it. The situation here in the north was very bad. There was one tuberculosis sanatorium in the south called Vífilsstaðir, and it was opened, it was built 1910, and it was full, and there were long waiting lists. And in the north, the disease was very bad. It was very widespread, and people had to take on a long journey to go to Vífilsstaðir. And so they found out that they had to build another sanatorium in the north, but where in the north? That was the big question. Akureyri is a biggest town in the north, so it had to be close to Akureyri, but they wanted to have these hospitals a bit further from, not too close to the cities. And because there was, and still is, hot water there, there were several places that were taken in consideration, but my great-grandmother, she made a deal. She was living in a farm at the time. Her name was Maria, like me. She made a deal that is still standing, that if she would give them hot water for the hospital, they would give her electricity. And this agreement is still ongoing. My daddy is still there and has electricity for free. So that was decided to build there. And then it's amazing. It's also a very nice story. There were women that started to collect money for this house. And they collected money and they were very eager because they saw the situation. People were just sick. Nobody was standing up to milk the cows or nothing. So they were fighting for this hospital. Then this landlæknir, that's the doctor that is like the top doctor in Iceland. He came north and he met with these people that were so eager to build this hospital. And he said, forget it. You can never make a big hospital like we did in the south. It's enough for you to aim at, say, a shelter for 10, 20 people. That's the most you can do. And they were so stubborn, you wait and see. And a few hours later, they had collected enough money. And then the government gave the half the same amount, so they could build this beautiful hospital. And when it opened, 1927, this same doctor came and held a speech. And this speech is, you can look it up in the papers. And he says in the speech, I see you look at me, women. I didn't believe in you, but boy, was I wrong. And I'm not sure if I will experience anything like this in my entire life. He was so amazed that they did it. So it was a very big thing and amazing. And also the story how it was built in 16 months at this time with no machines. We're talking about shovels and wheelbarrows, and they had no machines, and they did not over exceed the estimated cost, which happens in every building today. Today, when they make big buildings, it's more expensive and it takes a lot longer time. But this was everything. Everything was just as they planned. So that's a nice story. But I forget to show you more pictures. Okay, here it's in the making, still very gray, and you can see on the left side, that's where the patient were supposed to lay outside on a bench, and maybe with a blanket or to cover and be warm, and they were supposed to lay there part of the day to get the sun and the fresh air, and also it was thought that the tuberculosis would, the cold air would somehow make it better. That's why they built all the sanatorium in Europe high up in the mountains and everywhere in the world. This is not so high up in the mountain, but they made this place to lay out. And there you can see there are no trees, there's no vegetation there. This is brand new. Next picture. There are trees, that's probably around 40, 42, something like this. Then this is on a black and white photo, but hand colored later on. And if you see, there's a little child on this cricket field. She told me, I didn't know, she's alive today. She was my dentist, and she told me she remembers when this photo was taken, and her mother, that was a nurse at the hospital, she is standing in behind one of the windows there. And she also remembers this photo shoot. It's amazing. And you can see how beautiful everything is. This is also the first botanical garden in Iceland, I'm told. The first plant garden. And then I tell stories at this museum that are not supposed to be forgotten. And this is one of my favorite stories. Sigurbjörn Sörensson is the gentleman on the photo with me. And in his hands, he has his rib bones, 5 rib bones that were taken out of him because he had tuberculosis and they didn't have any medicine at the time. And this was the ultimate operation if he wanted to try to save people's life. And his story is so amazing because he was this young man, 21 years old, newly married with a child that was a year old or something. And he went to Kristnes and got better and got out. And then he had a backlash and had to go again, got out. And for the second time, he got a backlash, went in again. And then he said, I don't want this. Please cut me, take out my ribs, make my lungs collapse. And that I can explain to you why they took these rib bones. The tuberculosis was mostly in the lungs, and to make it heal, the lungs, if it was in one of the lungs, the lung had to be still. Then sometimes these tuberculosis could dry up. Then, and to make the lung stay still, first they tried to give you loftbrjóst. They tried to pump air with a long needle here inside of your breast and just pump air in, and then the lung would collapse. And of course the air would leak. So you had to go for loftbrjóst once a week or every 10 days or something. He had already tried that. So that didn't work for him. So he wanted this next step, which is the pneumothorax, I think it's called in English, höggning in Icelandic. And then in only, they don't put you to sleep. They didn't do it at the time. They gave you some medicine so you couldn't feel the pain, but you were awake and you could hear everything. And he remembers still the sound when they broke the bones, took them out and let them in the bin, from like iron bin. So when it fell in the bin, you could hear the sound. And he asked the doctor to do this, and the doctor agreed to do it, and he got better. And normally people threw these bones away, but his wife loved every bone of him, and they were not supposed to throw them away. So she kept these bones in her stockings box, and at Hælið, the stocking box is there, the bones are there, and that's when I went to visit him at Húsavík and get the bones. This is so crazy. And there's Bibi. It's a beautiful story also. She was just not 2 years old, and she had the tuberculosis in fingers and legs. And her mother was single and wanted to get a job at Kristnes. That was normal for women to do if they had child there. But then they would have to be vaccinated. But somehow she didn't take the vaccine. She couldn't get a work there. So she had to just visit her daughter every week and wave her through the window. This little girl, she was she was in pain, and she cried a lot and screamed a lot, and they had to tie her down to the bed because otherwise she would touch her. They tried to somehow take the tuberculosis away, and she had to, she couldn't touch it. But there was this one guy, old man, Elinor was his name, who somehow could reach her and make her calm and happy. And they got very close and very good friends. And when she was better and running around, she always ran into his room and cuddled him and got some perfume. And so he was very miserable when she left, 4 years old. She had to stay for 2 years there. So he decided to make some fund for her, put some money away and give it to her when she would turn 16. But in the meantime, he died, and he was prepared. He had talked to the doctor, the head doctor of Kristnes, Jónas Rafnar, and asked him to do this for him if he couldn't. And this Jonas guy, I will tell you more about him. He was not any normal doctor. He was like the big father of all this big home. And he, of course, when she turned 16, he sat down, wrote this letter, sent it east to Vopnafjörður and asked if there was a kaupfélag where he could put money and where can I give you this money that Elinor saved for you. And this story came to me from Bibi's stepfather, because her mother married again to this Hallgrímur, and this Hallgrímur called me to tell me that he had some letters that he wanted Hælið to have, pictures of her and letters. And then I met Bibi, and she can't remember a thing. She was so young, but she gave her blessings that I tell this story at Hælið. So that's another story from Hælið. And I also tell the story of this daughter and mother. They were the first patients to arrive at Kristnes, and the daughter, Inga, she wrote a diary, and she wrote her sister also so letters. Her sister was studying in Sweden, and these letters and this diary is such a how do you say it? The source, all the explanation that she describes everything. First, she is at the Vífilsstaðir in the south, and she describes everything there in details, the colors, the furniture, everything. And then she also has this dream that young girls have. She wants to meet someone, she wants to have kids, and all these longings and all these feelings, they are so beautifully written. And then she comes to Kristnes when that opens finally. She's always waiting to get closer to her family. They were waiting in the north, but then her mother had also got sick, and they went together there. And her mother died the first year, and she died then 2 years later. So they both died there, unfortunately. But all these letters and diary, they are so amazing. And their ancestors, family, they are also so faithful to Kristnes. They have given money and art, and they they are very dedicated to this place. And there's Jonas Ragnar, this amazing guy who he worked there from 27 to 56, and he saw when the medicine came and how everything got better, but it must have been tough to see all these patients die. And some say that he had some seventh sense, because he could see when people arrived if they were going to live or die. And sometimes people came in very, very sick, but he said not to worry, this is going to be fine. And also people came in not so sick, then he turned pale and oh my God. So he was like a very sensitive and nice guy. And then here's my logo, Hælið, Setrum Sögu Berklana. And it's also nice to explain that this logo is made by my friend who is related to this daughter and mother that were first at Hælið, at Kristnes. And here you can see on the left side, I was planning how this should be. How do I describe it? It's two things. It's cafe on the right side, and it's an old flat that the assistant doctor lived in with his family. So it's a flat connected to somehow you can call it a dormitory. The young women that worked at the Kristnes, they lived there with a shared kitchen, but in their own rooms. And this has just been standing empty the last decades, filling up with, garbage. And I opened between those houses, and the cafe, you can walk from the cafe into the exhibition. And in the beginning, I thought I have to take all the walls down. I have to make one big area and have all the newest technology. There has to be a lot of space and blah, 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 because I've been visiting every museum in Iceland and in other countries trying to find out how to do it. But then somebody told me, no, don't break any walls. The house in itself, it's a story, it's history in these walls, and make it just as authentic as you can, even though this wasn't the sanatorium itself. You can see it's behind in a very unclear drawing. That's the sanatorium. This is only the staff house that I got to use. And yeah, I'm very happy how it came out. It's not big. I can't take big groups, but it's very intimate and nice. Maybe a little bit too intimate in COVID times, but we'll hope that COVID will pass. And also in COVID, this epidemic gets another somehow. People relate to tuberculosis in a completely different way, because now we know the lingo, we know what the isolation is, we know all these words we are using in COVID, and I think it's amazing. Yeah, the timing is amazing. Of course, I've been shutting down because 10 people cannot come together, and it's been a struggle, but it's okay. And then maybe I will only keep it open at summer times, and maybe things will get better and I can open every day, and let's just see. And now I've been here, I've been running it for 3 summers, and it was going up until last year, and COVID took it down. Let's see what happened. Yeah, there I am, very happy at my desk. And it was this journey to do this, it's the best thing I've ever done, because everywhere where I went, people were so helpful. People just came with stuff. I didn't have to struggle to get stories or stuff or things for the museum. It just came to me. People brought me pictures, people brought me stories and furniture, and everything just somehow happened. It was just amazing. And I made this Carolina Fund. Do you know Carolina Fund? Yes. There I could make some money to make this happen. And then I also, we made this organization that are like the Friends of Hælið, almost 300 people that now pay every year some little amount that I can apply for to make concerts or book events, and I also made a theater piece there. That was amazing. Now I can tell you more about that. Let's see what's next. Here are just some pictures from when I was making it. People are bringing me tablecloths. This old man in the middle with the meter, he used to work there as a electricity, and he lost his mother when he was 2 years old from tuberculosis at this Kristnes. And yeah, there it is. This little brush here in the right corner, that's a brush that Jónas Rafnar, this doctor I told you about, sent to she was a 13 years old girl that was there for 3-4, maybe 9 months or something. And when she was confirmed, he took this is a part of a belt from the national costume, and he took this one part and made a brush out of it and sent her to wish her happiness. It was so amazing. Then these are pictures from the theater play, because I thought I would always like to connect this to theater, and all the experience at this museum is somehow theatrical, because this is like you walk into a scenography, you walk into some area, some time. And I got funding for making a theater there, where I used all these histories and they came alive there, and it got very good reviews. And I'm just going to show you some pictures from that. And here you can see down in the right corner the solarium lamps. They were both at Vífilsstaðir and Kristnes, and also in every elementary school. And people just thought that it's good for you, good for your health. Nothing special about tuberculosis, though. Yeah, there we are. You see, this corridor is narrow. It's very narrow. This would never be built like this today. It's too narrow for wheelchairs and stuff. There. These are moments from the theater play, and we could in the COVID we could still go on with our performance, because we only took 10 audience at the time, and we were the only operating theater in the country, because nobody takes so few audiences. And yeah, these are the last. This is the last picture. And there, if you would like to support the organization that is the friend organization, you can take a picture of this. This is the IBAN and SWIFT code, and this is a non-profit organization. It's not my company. That's a different one, but this is just that's the first thing I did, because I couldn't start building up as soon as I moved here. There was some misunderstanding. So to do something, I started this organization. There's a board, and I have nothing to do with it. Just I started it. That's, I think, let me see. That was it. So are there questions?
I do not see any questions at this moment from the audience, Maria. But could you tell me more? When I was visiting with you about this in preparation, I heard it referred to as the Kristnes forest. Is that the part that you said is now the botanical garden, or is part of a botanical garden?
Let me put up the first picture again. So this, you see, it goes high up in the hill, but first, just around the buildings were the botanical garden in the village. But the guy who was ráðsmaður, he was like a, what's that in English? The guy who, framkvæmdastjóri, not the doctor, but he was like the main man in everything else. He's actually
manager.
Yeah, he was actually my relative, brother to my grandfather. And he worked there. I think he has the longest, Jonas worked there long as a doctor, but not as long as he worked there as this manager. And he started planting trees, 1930, I think. So this forest has been growing ever since. And now there, okay, I grew up in Reykjus, which is the farm on the right side, and on the left side with the red roofs, there is Kristnes, the other farm. And now the people living there, they just recently bought this land with this forest. And it's interesting to see what they are going to do. The woman is from Norway, and she's very clever with all kinds of scrubs and berries, and she's trying everything, and they've got all kinds of exciting things going on there.
When did the facility close? When did the actual sanatorium close?
Yeah, we have a year for that, 1976. Then it was officially closed as a tuberculosis thing. But the last years had less and less patients with tuberculosis were there. So for a time, it was very strange. Nobody knew what to do with this house. So it was a bit of old people, bit of disabled people, bit of, they were at times, there were one convicted murderer, one psychopath. There was all kinds of people there. Then it was an elderly home for some years. And then last decade, or a little bit more, maybe 2 decades, it's been a rehabilitation for people after surgery. So people that get surgery in Akureyri, they go there to recover.
Oh, okay.
And it's very neat. And they have a swimming pool. It's like there's a big operation there. And in the beginning, when I was mentioning this, they didn't like my idea. They didn't want people coming. But now we are very good friends, and they come over for a coffee, and everything is fine.
Wonderful. I have a comment from Ruth Jonasson. She said, my third cousin, who we were reconnected with from my daughter doing the Snorri program, found out her mother went to your sanatorium when she was a young girl. I don't know many details about it, but thank you for this presentation, as it shows me what my second cousin, once removed, would have gone through. Takk fyrir.
Gaman að heyra, takk.
It took you, about 4 years to create the funding for this, to make your plans, to decide what to do. And there was a lot of actual physical renovation necessary, right? You had to, everything from painting to redoing walls and fixing up everything. And you said you moved your family back to your hometown. And are they participating in the museum, or they're doing other things at this time?
Actually, there's no employee except for me. But when we were making it, everybody was helping. My husband was there, my kids were there painting. And it was so beautiful also. People in this place, old friends of mine and acquaintances, they came, and one guy dug I had to make everything, for the toilet, how do you call this, drains and stuff, because everything was ruined. I had to dug these deep ditches, and he came with his machine and did everything and never asked me for any money. He said, no, you are doing great things and we are helping you. That's just how it is. And everything was like this. People just came and helped. It was so amazing. And I had a very clever girl with me. Auður Ösp is her name, and she is a scenography designer. So she helped me make this exhibition so beautiful as it is, with all these details, because I've been to museums that you have to read and read and read, and somehow I just lose my concentration and get bored. It's different for people, but I have to have something interesting, and that's why I love theater, and that I think that has come out so well. All these details that she made, and how all the stories are told differently, and I'm really happy with the outcome. And people were coming. It was very popular to come in groups of first, I think, only elder people that remembered the tuberculosis. They have been visiting a lot, but all the young people that have come, they are so amazed because they like the way the exhibition is set up, and they are also, because they are learning so much. There is so much information without being boring, and they come out and they are just amazed. Wow, this is awesome. Why didn't I know anything about it? Because this disease is somehow silenced, and I can understand when I try to, if you don't go around and tell people that you had tuberculosis, because it could be difficult to get a job, to hire a flat, nobody can play with your kids, because it was like nobody wanted to have this disease, and people didn't know. Is he really well now, or is he still with this? So people didn't talk about it, and just never. So it's
couple more. I'm sorry.
No. Okay.
Couple more questions or comments. First one is, how long does it take to get to the museum from Akureyri?
10 minutes by car.
It's on the way to the Jólahúsið, if anybody has been
very
there.
Close to Jólahúsið.
Another comment says, thank you so much, Maria Franka Mín from Sunna Furstenau. And then Stefan says, are you familiar with the so-called Akureyri disease, which seems to be a kind of chronic fatigue syndrome? There was an outbreak in the late 1940s. Perhaps it could provide another angle on top of tuberculosis.
I've heard about it, and I met, actually, when I was on this course doing a business plan for this, I met a woman with the disease. She was just a child when it was going on, and she had never been, she got never healthy. She has been living with this fatigue, and she told me all about it. And when I was doing this, I got all kinds of invitations. People wanted me to tell all the, history of, læknisfræði, hvað það? Medicine, because the history of medicine has no museum in Iceland. They were building it, but then they stopped. And all these things that the medicine has to display. Some were kept in some, I don't know, some garages, so they don't have any. But I said, no, this is not, that's not big enough. This is just a small one. It's only tuberculosis. You have to build your own.
How many people could stay, or patients could stay? How many staff could be housed?
In the hospital, it was built for 50 patients, but in the first years, it got so overfull because the need was so big. So they went up to 80 patients. They just, there were 10 in every room or something. The staff could probably be, that's a good question. The dormitory would house maybe 15, 16 girls, and then all these houses they built up all these houses for families. So I think the staff could have been maybe 30. Not sure. And in the beginning, the staff lived in the main building, and the doctor and his family with 3 kids, they just lived in one end on the middle floor, and all the other staff lived at the roof, attic. And then the 1931, the roof burned down. Luckily, it was during daytime, so no one was there, but it was working. And then they thought, okay, we have to build a house for the doctor. It's not good if he will burn inside with all the others. So they made this doctor house. And yeah.
When I was researching, I discovered that the architect who designed the building or the complex is the same one who built or who designed Hallgrímskirkju in Reykjavik. I found that to be extremely interesting.
Yes, because Samuel Guðjónsson, our official government architect at the time, he was designing all the beautiful buildings. Akureyri, the University of Iceland, and many schools, Laugavarsskóli, and yeah, he designed all these beautiful houses.
So he was a kind of the state architect at the time. Here's another comment. Here in Manitoba, there was a tuberculosis sanatorium at Ninette, which had many Icelandic patients over the years, as well as Icelandic staff. Would you be interested in connecting with those familiar with tuberculosis among the Western Icelanders?
That would be lovely. Yeah.
That's from Stefan Jonasson. I will, if it's okay with you, Stefan, I will forward her your email address to her.
That's nice.
And looks like we got another one. This is from Sheila. My grandmother, who came to Canada in 1894 when she was 5 years old, died from tuberculosis in 1925 in Calgary, Alberta. Her treatment was very similar to the treatment at your hospital, mostly cold, fresh air. Tuberculosis was widespread in Canada up until the 1950s or 60s. And I can maybe mention that I've worked in a local, fairly large hospital here in the metropolitan area of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we have to get yearly tuberculosis tests. So it's interesting that we don't really, as you say, don't hear a lot about it, but someone is still watching out for us.
And I was very happy. Yesterday, I got an email from, they have these funds here you can apply for if you want to do something cultural or educational, and I applied for what I call sultuplástur, because when I was a kid, we went to the school, and they put something here and then this band-aid, and if you got red, then they had to examine you for tuberculosis, and we called it sultuplástur, jam, a band-aid. And I was applying for inviting 6th graders in elementary school to come visit Hælið and learn everything about this disease. And they granted me some money to do that. So I was very happy. So that's one of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to educate and tell people about this in this how do you say it, lively way or theatrical way.
Here's another comment. This is from Randy. There was also a tuberculosis sanatorium in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. So as you can see, I do remember seeing a number around the world, but I can't recall what it was. But I think it was much more widespread than we perhaps
it was
think
everywhere.
or understand. Yep.
And actually, I was looking for a similar thing somewhere. Is there a museum about tuberculosis? The only thing I found, and I can't remember where it is in the States, there is this hospital that is kept as it was. It's preserved somehow. There's no it's not. It's like it is, and sometimes you can go on a tour, but I don't think they have changed anything. But that was the only thing I found.
Excellent.
In Sweden, they once made an exhibition, but that was just, an exhibition that was taken down. So I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think I might be the only tuberculosis museum in the world.
Very special space. Here's another comment for you. This is from Stefan again. This presentation has been fascinating. This is one of those universal stories that is quickly being forgotten, even though TB loomed large in our lives not that many years ago. This is such an important story to tell, one that has touched all of our families. And it is wonderful that the memory is being preserved in one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Thank you. And I wanted to add, because telling these stories, I was I was stressed because I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to.
Right.
I just wanted to do it right, and that's why I'm so happy, because people come and they see that it's respectful, it's beautiful, and I'm like honoring their memories, so they're not forgotten. There's nothing wrong about it. I was so afraid that it might come out wrong somehow, but it didn't.
Here's another very good question from Judith. This has been very interesting. Is TB also called consumption in English?
Yeah. Tiring. Okay. That's the name of the play we did, Tiring, Consumption. And all the arias, all the operas, there are so many operas about this dying tuberculosis patient, Vivaldi, I think Mimi in now I can't remember the name of the operas, but it was called the romantic disease, because people got so thin and pale and they got dark around the eyes. That's also how we use makeup today. We want to be pale with red cheeks, and there's so much in this that is fascinating, I think.
And Judith continues, hope to visit your museum when I visit Iceland again. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments that folks have at this time? Well, I think that we will then allow all of us to get on with our day, but I wanted to say thank you so much, Maria, not only for this presentation, which as you can see was very well received, but also for the time and effort and sacrifices, not only of you, but your family moving from the big city back home. You've given us a lot to think about, and I think we will be much more aware of tuberculosis in the not too distant future. I do have one more comment here. Thank you very much, says Rose. So I just wanted to remind everyone that our next destination is Vinland Center, which is in the central western side of Iceland. It's known as the Leifur Eriksson Center, and that will be on Tuesday, February 1st. So I know everybody's enjoyed it. Go ahead, Maria. Did you have things to
funny
add?
Because I saw that you are going to Vinland Center, and then Bjarnheiður, she was teaching at my course when I was learning to do the business plan for Hælið. Really? She was a teacher there. It's such a small country. Give her my best.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you also to those of you who came to watch. I hope you learned a little bit and enjoyed it, and we'll hope to see you in the future. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.